Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining for our webinar today. We'll wait maybe 60 seconds for a few more people to trickle in. Thanks for joining us wherever you are, whether that's on our LinkedIn stream or Twitter. And we will be recording this as well. So if you have to leave partway through, then I think if you are RSVP'd, we do have your email. So we'll be sharing the recording afterwards. So maybe another 30 seconds or so before we introduce the speakers and dive into the webinar. Before we get into it, I will say I have a bit of a cough at the moment, some kind of chest infection. I don't know what it is, so apologies in advance for my voice and any coughing that you might hear. I think Shensi, you said that you're not doing so great either.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to be a little snotty. I'm sorry, guys. Apologies if I have to blow my nose a couple of times during this.
Cool, we should be good. All right,
I feel fine.
1 minute.
I feel great.
Kimia's holding it down for us. Cool. Let's dive in then. We are 1 minute past the hour. Thanks again to everyone joining us on the live streams. My name is Taimur. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Causal. We are a business planning tool for early and growth stage companies. Joining me today is Shensi. Shensi is the co-founder of Merge, a leader in providing the tools to transform how B2B companies build customer-facing integrations. We are actually a customer of Merge. Merge has raised about $75 million in funding from various people, including Accel, NEA, and Edition. I'm also joined today by Kimia, who is the head of savings at Ramp. I'm sure Ramp needs no introduction here. We're also customers of Ramp. Ramp is the leader in next generation finance tools, from corporate cards and expense management to bill payments, accounting integrations. Ramp has raised over $1 billion from funds including Founders Fund, D1 Capital Partners, Goldman Sachs, and others. So thank you both so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Shensi, anything to add to that intro about yourself, about Merge?
No, that's perfect. Thank you for the warm introduction.
Awesome. And Kimia, anything else useful to know about Ramp before we dive into the discussion?
I think you covered the main points. I'm sure a lot will get uncovered as we chat.
Okay, awesome. Sweet. So the topic of the webinar today is how to do more with less. Obviously in the current macro environment, there's definitely a lot less money sloshing around in the startup ecosystem. Most companies are having to cut spend, cut budgets, and I think even in the best of times, early stage startups are always constrained. If not in terms of money, then definitely in terms of time and focus and people. And so that's kind of the general theme of the webinar today. And obviously a big part of that is, when you're deciding to solve a problem, do you decide to build something in-house to solve that problem, or do you outsource that to a third-party vendor? And so that's where I'd love to start the conversation today, around this kind of build versus buy piece. Now, obviously, internally at Causal, as I said, we're customers of Merge, which I think is like one of a very typical example of like a build versus buy problem, where we want Causal, the product, to be able to integrate with every single HR system, every single accounting system, you name it. It takes a lot of work to build that. We'd probably need like a big engineering team just focusing on data integrations, and so that's been one of the key pieces where a company like Merge comes along. We can just integrate once with Merge and not have to build all of that stuff out ourselves. I think that's kind of been one example for us. Shensi, maybe just to pass over to you. I'm curious what kinds of situations you guys have found yourselves in, where you're kind of deciding, hey, do we build this thing in house? Do we buy it? And how do you kind of weigh up those two factors?
Sure. I think one thing that we always really try to think about is if we have a unique advantage that will allow us to build something better for our customers than a company that fully focuses on that. And a lot of times that's just not true. However, in the unique situations where it is true, we do decide to invest those resources. So for instance, since we're an API company, our product is our documentation. And I know a lot of companies choose to use outsourced documentation, and especially if your API is not like your core product, completely understand it. It's super fast. It's really easy. And those products are amazing. However, with API companies, you really want some custom things to be available for your customers. You might want to add additional information. You might want them to test certain things. You might want to add additional nits as well. And so that's why we chose to build in-house. But there are a lot of other things that we chose to outsource. For instance, our SDK generation, we used Open API Generator. There's just no way that we were going to be able to do it the same way in-house as like an open source community. And so it definitely is a trade-off. And I know the RAM team is really good at also using a lot of other outsourced companies to move really quickly. And sometimes it's totally worth it. And we definitely found that to be the case with our SDK generation.
Yeah, I'll chime in here as well, Shensi. I think that's exactly right. Like, if you have a unique advantage that adds to your end value that you're driving for the customer, build it in-house. Those long-term things really start to compound. But I also think the interesting lens, and again, you guys raised a bunch of money, and so have we, obviously. The interesting lens here is it's more tempting to build when you are flush with cash and when you have strong engineering, because you think you can do everything, right? And I like the fact that Ramp has been so deliberate about not building and partnering, I mean, with people like yourself, is it allows you to go faster and really lean into those advantages that you can drive for your customers. And so for us, like, our main mission and focus is saving time and money for our customers. Anything that doesn't accelerate that mission, we're just not going to bother with. And so it's really just a question of discipline across the board.
Awesome. No, that makes a ton of sense. And so, Kimia, for you guys at Ramp, what have been, I think Merge on the engineering side, Merge is like kind of the big one for us. We do actually, for API, we're not really an API, but just for product documentation, we do actually use Gitbook for that, and a few of there's other things. But I think Merge is probably the thing that saved us kind of the most engineering hours by outsourcing that. What have been like the sort of top one or two sort of partnerships or vendors that have saved you guys a lot of engineering resource at Ramp?
I mean, not to pile on, but Merge, obviously. You guys have been fantastic partners for us.
Oh, wow.
But I think what you're building is really tough. I think what you're building is really tough. I mean, the other one that I'll say, which is an obvious one, and now it's starting to be a competitive advantage for us, is all of our OCR stuff. So if you've used Ramp in the past, we have the most magical zero-touch receipt matching. It is a phenomenal experience. I mean, this is what people rave about on Twitter. And that is a moat. We started on the fast side of this on outsourcing our OCR efforts, and now as this becomes more and more of a key feature for us, we're looking on bringing this in. And so it's all the little tweaks on like, what do people talk about? How do we move fast? And then if it adds to our long-term strategy, we look to bring it in house.
That's awesome.
It is really magical.
I wasn't aware that you guys were actually outsourcing that in the early days. That's super interesting. We've kind of been talking so far about building versus buying stuff that's kind of customer facing, kind of core to the product. I think the other side of all the different tools that companies use are basically internal tools, right? It's stuff to help your team coordinate, help your team work more efficiently. I'm curious, with the rise of no code, low code, etc., it's much less of a buzzword today than it was like 2 years ago. I think a few years ago it seemed like no one was going to write code anymore. But yeah, curious if you guys use any of those sort of tools internally and how that's changed how you think about kind of the more internal software that you need at Ramp and at Merge. I mean, from our side, I think Retool has been a big unlock for us. Retool is kind of like a low-code internal software builder. We've used it basically from day one at Causal, and it's kind of meant that engineers have a lot less work to do actually building the internal tools, and then our customer-facing teams don't need to sort of bug engineers every time they need to upgrade someone or change, kind of snoop around and see, hey, what's this customer up to try and fix some support problem. I think, Retool's probably been the biggest thing for us. I'm curious how you guys handle internal software and building versus buying that kind of stuff. Maybe Shensi starting off with Merge.
So we actually made a huge mistake in the beginning by just building everything in-house. Like, we built our website like with HTML, CSS, and like we built like everything in-house, and all of our internal tooling is in-house. And I think this year, Gil, my co-founder, was just like, all right, guys, we need to stop. And so we also ended up using Retool as well. And it really moved us to be a lot faster, because a lot of these dashboards are never going to be customer facing ever. And it was taking us a lot of time to be able to start start building these and to be able to make sure that they're syncing continuously. So we do something similar, and we're actually actively trying to move away from that mentality internally. So you guys are smart for doing it earlier.
One thing, I mean, I credit Eric and Kareem for this, but one thing that I think Ramp has done extremely well is the product ops function. And so, and one thing that I think more organizations should do is give internal teams shadows. And what I mean by that is like, what are you doing more than 3 times? Have an outside observer watch that and say, look, I'm actually like, I'm an external party to your process. I'm going to build you something a little bit better. And like, you are their customer in a sense. And so you can create this sort of like recursive loop of becoming more and more efficient. I mean, look, we use Retool as well. It's a fantastic tool. It lets us move so much faster. But I think a big unlock for us is just having the resources. And if you're bandwidth constrained, I mean, you can hire contracts for this. Like, this is not a hard thing to do, but to have someone audit your work over and over and build automation loops to save you a bunch of time. I mean, like our risk team, enormous, right? Like this is not the risk team itself is not enormous, but it's been an enormous point of leverage for our team to do. So that's what I would say on the internal tooling side.
Right. And some of these risk tools, are they also in Retool, or like are there things that are so core to your internal operations that you actually just build it from scratch?
It's a combination of both. It's definitely a combination of both. I would say there's some things that we just build internally and they're irreplaceable. But on the other stuff, on the lighter weight side, I mean, a lot of our customer health stuff, Looker obviously is a huge one. Just making sure we like. I actually think the big gap is like not a lot of people know SQL, as the company grows, and so you have to ask a bunch of people. And so how do you just plug that gap? Which makes a lot of sense. I'm actually curious, at Causal, like what are you guys doing internally? You mentioned Retool, but any processes or anything internally?
Yeah, honestly, I think we have lots of. Yeah, I think Retool is a big one, and I think even though we use it quite a lot, I think we still like undervalue it. Where I remember, a couple of months ago, I was trying to get a sense of like, hey, how healthy are our customers as a whole, and how healthy is like each cohort of customers, by month basically. And we have like amplitude set up, we have like super granular data feeding into all these different things. No one actually has historically ever had enough time to poke around in amplitude very much. So we've had it set up from day one. I'd say like maybe once a month, like if someone asks a question, we actually go in there to see it. We never really had basically a customer health dashboard. And we were using another product called June, a fairly early stage company. It's kind of like a customer success sort of analytics tool. And they're good for like some insights. But yeah, basically a couple of months ago, I really wanted to understand high level and then being able to dig deep of like, hey, how healthy are our customers by cohort? And none of the tools we were using, we have sort of probably like 5 different tools that have different bits of customer data. And I think everyone who joins Causal always feels like, okay, there's a lot of different internal tools going on here. But actually, I spent probably like one full day building stuff in Retool. And at the time I was thinking like, man, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. Like I've like spent a whole day on this now. Like maybe this was a waste of time. But now this customer health app that I built in Retool, I look at it every single day. A bunch of our team look at it every single day. I think it's probably much more used than any of our like BI dashboards in Metabase or whatever, because you can actually interact with it. You can kind of drill down into customers, etc. And so I think, it kind of made me think, okay, there's probably a bunch of other like Retool apps that we could have built where if someone carves out even a whole day towards doing this, it'll be a massive point of leverage. So I'm very bullish on Retool. I think one thing that hasn't been that useful for us is kind of general BI tools. So we use Metabase, which is hooked up to our like Snowflake or whatever. And there's definitely a bunch of stuff in Metabase. Like every team has a bunch of stuff in there. I think the issue for us is that it kind of gets disorganized by default. It's very hard to organize it in a way that people kind of use it the way it's supposed to be used. And so if I want to answer a question, it's honestly quicker for me to just write the query in Metabase to answer the question rather than figure out, okay, has someone already made a dashboard for this? Has someone already made a chart or a table that answers this question? And so I think we've been a bit underwhelmed, or maybe, it's less about the product and more about an organizational thing, perhaps. We don't get that much mileage out of a BI tool like Metabase. But I think that's something we'd like to do more of. How are you guys doing BI? I think I feel like BI was kind of this. It's always been heralded as this. Every company's got to be like data driven and all this kind of stuff. And like every company has a BI tool, but I think I actually know very few companies where the BI tool gets as much mileage as like it's supposed to, just because it's always disorganized and some people can write SQL, some people can't. What have been your experience? I mean, you mentioned at Ramp you guys use Looker. Yeah, how has that been? Like, how are people kind of actually looking at it every day? Like, what's that usage look like?
Yeah, it's funny because you say you haven't. It might be a stage thing. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah.
But we have probably stretched Looker to the extreme, like
Oh, wow, okay.
so much mileage. Yeah, because like people, some of our teams just live out of Looker, and all it is answering questions and making sure that things are going in the right place. One thing that I actually think is really interesting, just in the spirit of doing more with less, I do think there's an 80-20 here, and I think there's a real sort of like, are we doing this multiple times? Do we actually need to know? Does everyone need to know? And then do I need to, like, I mean, your time is super valuable. Do you need to spend a full day doing this? Customer health, you should spend 3 days doing that. Like, that is extremely valuable. But I think just like asking the basic questions of who's going to need to know and why is super important. It's something we do all the time.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's right.
we use Looker a lot. Like,
Oh, okay.
sorry, just similarly, we use it like every day. Like at some points we would live out of it, or I think our customer success team just lives out of Looker too, because all of the data's in there. And it was to the point where we actually automated things in Looker with Raycast, because there were certain queries that we were always making. And so we just use Raycast to just like, okay, on this day, look up this linked account and like this log,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And it just like, we just created all this automation. It was so worth it.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, can you guys dive a bit, dig a bit deeper there? Like, what kind of, like, what are some of those key workflows emerged in Looker? Like, what are these rate cost shortcuts?
It was just certain customer questions were always coming up. And I think on the post sale side is especially where we added a lot of automation, because we just have such high and I'm sure Ramp has, and you guys actually too have a similar problem, but we have a really high volume of post sales questions. There's
Right.
a lot of inbound, self-serve motion, and we just have a lot of questions that can come in to the point where we have to add a lot of automation so we can answer the questions quickly. They're also very technical questions. So like, we can't just be like, oh, the button's here. It's like, okay, what is happening with this specific integration on this day with this mapping? And so that does require us to go through Looker. And so what we were noticing was oftentimes we were filtering for certain logs, for a certain organization, or for a certain linked account. We were looking for certain like integration statuses. And so we just realized that there were like 4 main workflows that were always happening. And we just put them into Raycast, where there was one command. We put in like the organization, and then it would immediately pop up in the dashboard, instead of having to manually select all the different columns that we wanted, and then manually adding all the different filters. It was just automated.
I mean, I'll give 2 examples from a strategic perspective and then from a tactical perspective. From the strategic perspective, my role is head of savings, which is somewhat nebulous, but basically I'm concerned about saving our customers the maximum amount of money. We have so much data. We have so many transactions. We have so many customers. We want to understand what our customers are doing. I'll give you a sort of like magical story on this, because I think it's really fun. Our customers spend a lot on just like Home Depot, Home Goods, whatever. And as we were reviewing our data, obviously in Looker, and understanding what people are spending on, what we actually did was we realized that a lot of people were spending on Home Depot. And Nick, our head of growth, found that Home Depot runs 11% rebates in specific stores. And so in Looker, we can find, okay, where is this transaction happening? Is it from this store? Can we auto-file this rebate for them? And then later send them a physical gift card. And we've saved like tens of thousands of dollars a month for our customers.
That's really cool.
On this. It's amazing. Yeah. And I mean, like, we wouldn't understand where our customers are spending and like what to do around that. But I think it's just these little magical moments. And then also like what categories to focus on, right? Like it's so clear for us that software is such a big category, and that's where I spend a ton of my time. But I mean, there's so many categories of spend across the board that we just want to understand. And then on the tactical side, our whole account management team, every day it's what are our customers doing? What questions do they have? Are they hitting their targets? What does activation look like? And really just like painting the picture with clear dials on where to go. And there's no silver bullets. It's only lead bullets. And the easiest way to track that is just, okay, are we doing the right things in a repeatable motion and in a scalable way? And of course, we have to leverage this in a data-driven way. And for us, it's Looker.
That's super cool. Yeah, I had no idea companies were using Looker to that extent for that kind of stuff. But yeah, it might just be a stage thing. At what point did you guys implement Looker and start seriously using it like that?
I think it might be cultural because my co-founder is basically like Looker's biggest fan. This is not going to help us in the renewal at all, but he's basically Looker's biggest fan.
We'll help you out. Don't worry.
And from the very beginning, like every non-technical person that joined the company had to learn Looker. And it was just like our finance team knows Looker, our post-sales team knows Looker, our sales team knows Looker, everyone uses Looker. We have dashboards that the entire company like accesses for customer activity. The entire company uses Looker. We bookmark it in Slack. We have triggers from it. I think it probably was like a cultural thing, but my co-founder found a lot of value from it to the point where, it's really ingrained in the team.
That's sick.
I don't have a great answer. I mean, I can attribute a lot of our data cleanliness and data hygiene and just best practices to Ian, our head of data. Incredible. He's incredible. He comes from a very analytical background, and he laid a lot of the foundation for us. And again, like when you have as much data as we do flowing through the platform, there's just so many questions. I mean, Shensi, to your point, there's so many questions that come up that various teams need to answer. So I actually think you're doing the right thing, establishing this early and making sure that you have best practices in place so you can answer questions later.
Nice, super cool. Outside of, we talked a bunch about kind of BI tools. There's obviously other kind of very big categories of tools that every company has, like CRMs and so on. Maybe talking about kind of the sales side and CRMs for a second. Are there any sort of hacks, automations, other tools on top that have sort of 5x or 10x the productivity on the sales side or involving a CRM for you guys?
So we use this company called SwanTide that helps us with sales ops. And the last company that I worked at, I think it was like a whole team that was focusing on sales ops, like every field that we wanted to add, whether the data was clean, like yelling at the sales team to make sure they're updating their data. It was a lot of people that were involved in that process. And SwanTide is like a small seed stage company. They just generated our Salesforce instance for us. So instead of having to pay a consultant that may or may not have totally fucked it up, like we just knew it was going to be perfect. They were going to refresh the data. They were going to be able to provide the integrations. And it's been really amazing being able to just not even have to think about that and just outsource that to someone else. We've also used for outbounding, we use a lot of tooling there. There's a lot of ways that we can modify the wording using AI and also I'm heavily involved in outbounding too. So we try to be really creative in like how we could find new companies to reach out to, how we do the messaging, and the way that we get access to them too.
I'd say on the outbound side, this is where Ramp has done a lot of building internally. The motion that we've built. I mean, look, we use a ton of tools as well, no doubt. But the motion that we do is really focused on. I think I might have froze, by the way, so just let me know if I'm still here. Where we really lean in and focus is just like building this insane outbound machine, and it's been phenomenal across the board. Also, do I keep freezing? I just want to double check because you guys keep freezing on my side.
I think you. I think you keep freezing for me. I don't know about you, Shensi.
Yeah, you're coming in and out like you're frozen right now.
Okay, hopefully he will join. Can you still hear me though, Shensi?
We might. Yeah, I can hear you. You're blurry too, though. So I don't know if this is like a webinar thing, but you're a little blurry too.
Okay, sorry about that. I think so. The recording of these will all be based on kind of local recordings. So everyone's recording should hopefully be like HP quality. Apologies to anyone watching if they're looking at sort of 10 pixels of me. Wait a second, Kimia. Okay, yeah, it looks like Kimia's frozen for everyone. He has just dropped out. So hopefully he will join back in. But yeah, we actually use SwanTide as well for the sales ops side of things. I think it was very useful in kind of getting from 0 to 1 and just getting implemented on Salesforce. Hey, Kimia, are you back with us?
Apologies. Yeah, I don't know. This was working fine up until right now, and I'm tethering to my phone, so hopefully it's stable. But I'm just going to leave it for the rest of the webinar.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I think it looks pretty good quality now. So yeah, you were saying that you guys on the outbound side, you've done a lot of sort of custom in-house stuff that you've built.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about Ramp is very horizontal, right? We can target a lot of businesses. Amex is obviously our main competitor and an enormous company. And a lot of where we spend our time focusing is just how do we create blanket coverage, but target the best fit customers across the board. And this has resulted in an actual spun up team. We call it OATS, Outbound Automation Team. And there's a ton of data that goes into that. There's a ton of improvements that we make on the messaging. I mean, Shensi, to your point, like there's so much customization, and we use a lot of AI as well on sentiment analysis. So when we're actually generating inbound, how do we sort that? Because we have an enormous amount of inbound leads. But I think the key there is, instead of throwing salespeople at it, we threw engineering at it and really tried to build a system that then feeds the salespeople.
Nice, super cool. On the topic of AI, obviously, massive buzzword right now. Every company is kind of working on some AI thing that they're launching. I know, Shensi, that you guys just launched Blueprint using some of these LLMs, and congrats on the launch. But yeah, can you talk us through a little bit why you decided to build that amongst all the different things that you could build, how you envision developers using it, any kind of unexpected things that came out of building this AI tool on top of Merge?
Yeah, one thing that we didn't really expect but was a pleasant surprise was with this new AI wave was that all these B2B AI powered companies need integrations. And it was really exciting to see the different use cases that we had never even thought of could be possible being built on top of Merge, since we were helping provide all of the data. And so that caused us to start thinking, well, if people are building all of these things on Merge, like what can we do with our own data? And also, how can we add this into our own product? And we have slowly been building a large community of developers that really are excited about what we're doing, what we're creating, and how they can contribute to the APIs in the future. And we were like, let's start this foundation for it. And so Blueprint is really that like step one of people being able to contribute potential mappings and integrate, and the start of a new integration build to our unified API, so that you aren't as reliant on Merge in the future, and are able to just contribute to not only yourself but also everyone else in the Merge community. So it was really, really fun. It really felt like the old days. Like, we're not that big, we're 75 people, but it really felt like when we were like 5 people, we were like, fuck it, ship it. And it was so fun. The team worked really, really hard, and they were so creative, and it was just really exciting to be able to launch something so quickly like that.
On the ramp side, sorry, I think there's a bit of a delay. Taimur, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to move on to you guys. I know since the beginning, you've had like bits of what you might call AI in the product, from like OCR to other things. Has the new kind of generation of LLM models unlocked something else for you guys? Because yeah, it seems like you've been doing a bit of AI stuff embedded in the product for a while. How has it been for you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've been embedding AI from the very beginning. I mean, credit to the early ramp team for being so forward looking. Now everyone's focusing on AI, but we were early on this, away from the start, because there's so much mundane work in finance that can be automated through AI. One of the interesting things, and again, this is why my company was acquired, is all around price intelligence. Price intelligence is this black box. There's no understanding, but all these people are making decisions on the back channel. And for us, really where we wanted to align is, what do our customers need? And then how do we bring them that intelligence? And then again, AI is the power of that intelligence. So extracting that information, making sure that it's presentable in an easy way. There is a lot that goes into a contract to help someone buy a piece of software. And so painting that picture of, here's actually what you need to know, and here's your blueprint. AI is the backbone for that. So a lot of interesting things coming.
Nice. And how do you kind of structure that in the org? Is there like a sort of dedicated AI team on the engineering side, or does it just depend on kind of different product teams and what they need? How have you approached that?
It really just depends on the product. We don't have like an internal AI team or like a dedicated focus. I think it's really a prioritization question of how you focus on anything. Is this something that we want to embed? Do we have the right people in the room for this? How do we maintain a lean team so that the focus is razor sharp? And then, what pieces are we missing? Are there contractors that we need? Are there third party? I mean, luckily we have some of the best engineers in the world at Ramp. And so largely we can do a lot in-house, but again, no internal team.
Nice, that's interesting. Shensi, are you still with us, by the way? I think your video has cut out.
Oh, yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Cool. No worries. Yeah, I'm curious, just sort of internally, how this new blueprint product that you launched, how that was structured. Was there kind of a crack team of like a few people just working on that separately from the rest of the product team? Was it kind of a core product priority that everyone was working on? How did that actually go down?
It was a pretty small team because we wanted to move very quickly. So it was just three engineers and like two marketing people. We just really ran.
Nice, that's awesome. Um, Sweet. I guess maybe changing tack a little bit. Maybe we'll kind of keep chatting for sort of 5 to 10 minutes, and then open the floor for Q&A. We've kind of talked about the general macro environment. Most companies are kind of going into cost cutting mode, but based on how much money you guys have raised, I think you're probably not in that cohort of companies that has to be too worried about cash, even given the current environment. And so I'm curious, gi- given that presumably, cash and runway isn't a massive problem at Ramp and at Verge, has the macro environment changed the way that you guys think about spending money, which projects to prioritize? Yeah, curious what the effects have been for companies that actually have a lot of cash. Like, what have been the changes for you? Maybe Shenzi, starting with you.
To be honest, it hasn't changed that much for us. We've always been very efficient, and I think it was a little bit different in the even in like 2021, especially. We hired a head of finance really early on. She was our ninth hire, and she's
Oh,
psycho. She really wants to make sure that we're very cheap, and so because of that, we didn't really change that much when the downturn happened. And so it was really actually quite easy for us. We didn't have to do any layoffs. We continued just hiring as we always wanted to. I know that was probably a little different from a lot of other companies, but it actually didn't change that much for us, which was really nice.
that's awesome.
The
What
the
about you,
the
Kim?
boring answer on my side and for Ramp is we've always been hyper efficient. We've always had an eye on making sure that we're not overspending. We're always ruthless on our costs. I mean, look, like I don't want to sort of like toot my own horn, but like that is basically all I think about. And so, I mean, head of savings is, again, like I said, a nebulous title, but we use buyer and now negotiations internally. We negotiate all our contracts. I think the other thing too is really just it's more around education and discipline. And Shenzi, it really sounds like you've started this early, and Taimur, I'm sure you've done the same. Where if you treat your employees with respect and the intelligence, and you spend time educating them around finance and just why are we spending money, again, like these are all our dollars. These are not to be wasted. I think it breeds a great culture of spend and just thrift across the board. And companies now are coming around to this. But again, if you ingrain this early in your culture, I think it's super, super important. And then on the how has it affected us side, I actually think it's helped. It's helped a lot. I mean, our Ramp counter position in the market. We're here to help our customers save time and money. People now care about savings, and they care about savings in a big way. And if there's automation that they can have through a platform that is actually looks at on a transactional basis, then it's something that our customers will look at. And so I think it's set us up for success. I think companies are starting to really care. But I mean, wind in our sails.
That's awesome. Yeah, it must be a great time to be a company that helps people save money. Yeah, I think
Well,
for
it's
us,
just it's
I mean,
just
we're still
customer
very small.
alignment. I mean, it's customer alignment from the start. Yeah.
Yeah, on our side, we're still a pretty small team. We're still 24 people at the moment, and so headcount is basically all of our costs. I think because the team is so small, everyone is reasonably aware of kind of the sales side of things, where you're constantly trying to figure out like ROI. Like when we're selling Causal, people want to know what's the ROI, and we're kind of constantly thinking in terms of that frame. And so I think when like buying software or thinking about buying software or thinking about spending money on marketing, yeah, I feel like just organically there's a lot of discussions internally of like, okay, what is the ROI of this thing, and is this can we kind of quantify that, and do we think it's actually any good? Um, yeah, so I think that hasn't changed too much. I think we've definitely seen our own, prospects that we talk to definitely care a lot more about how much money they're spending. They're having to justify to their CFOs and stakeholders a lot more when they're thinking of buying Causal or buying other software. And so I think in like Q4 last year and Q1 this year, there was definitely some headwinds in the market in general, where it seemed like people were, just a lot more spendthrift on buying software. I think we have started to see that pick up on the sales side now. I don't know, maybe people are just kind of used to it now, or like people have already made the cuts, and the people who are evaluating software now are pretty serious about it. That's probably been the biggest thing. Shensi, I'm curious why you guys decided to hire a head of finance as your ninth employee. I mean, we typically see, we see companies getting to sort of 50 plus without a single full-time finance hire. It's usually kind of a thing that companies do once something has already gone wrong. They think, oh, we better hire a head of finance now. So, what was the thinking there?
I think seeing how the last company that I worked at, the finance team was so strong that it was actually revenue generating for the company, because they were able to help the company make decisions that were high ROI, making sure that they weren't overspending, that every head was actually going to make the company a lot better. And I felt like, especially in a company that was going to be so operationally complex, that it would really, really, really benefit us to have that as an early hire, and especially a really strong hire too. So I actually used to work with Alexi at my last company, and she has completely changed the trajectory of merch. Every single time we've had our pricing is so complicated and is very difficult to nail down. She's thought through all of that. Whenever we want to hire like a new team member, she's always thinking through the ROI of that, like how it benefits the company. When we're going through like our forecasting, she's thinking through all of it, and it's just such a game changer for the business, because you're able to that the direction that you're moving in is the right one, versus you're just like randomly hiring people and you feel like it's gonna like just help you. I feel like a lot of startups don't think about that enough or prioritize it enough, but it can really, really, really add clarity to your future.
That's awesome.
I'll jump in as well. I could not agree more with that. I think part of why Ramp is so strong is also our finance team. Look, we need capital markets because of the nature of our product, especially early, but they're so strong on making sure that the fundamentals are there. One thing, Taimur, that I want to pull a thread on that you said, and then Shensi, you mirrored as well. It's all around ROI. And I think the question here is, don't let the bar of ROI be fixed. And what I mean by that is, say you get 2x ROI, right? I think startups, especially trying to do more with less, should be pushing that bar. So you've squeezed every percentage out as possible. If you can push that to 5 or 6, like, you should absolutely be trying to do that. And like, if you find a lever that works, continue to pull that lever. I think a lot of early companies, especially because they're trying to move so fast, they'll find something that works, they'll pull the lever, generate 2x ROI, and then they're like, all right, what else can we try? When there's so much more juice to be squeezed out of that. So I think that ROI conversation, and just like how far can you really push things, really matters.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think there have definitely been cases where we've invested in a certain thing, where it might be like a part of the product or a marketing thing. And there are these decisions you have to make where it's like, okay, this kind of works decently. Do we double down and like try and optimize it, or do we try something else? Have there been any specific things at Ramp where you guys could have just moved on and tried the next thing to get more juice out of the ROI, but you decided to, hey, let's double down on this one thing and optimize that and change that 2x from like to 5x or 10x? Are there any things that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, my product. I'll be very specific. We started with, the thesis was, negotiations should be free. It will be this incredible on-ramp for our customers. They'll generate a ton of value. And what ended up happening was, it did generate a ton of value. Customers loved it, but it was very transactional. It was very reactive. And so what they would do is they would send us a contract. We would negotiate. We would find them a better price. We'd give them the price intelligence. But it required our customers to be organized. And we were in this death loop of, we're not generating the results we want to generate because our customers are unorganized and because we have to be reactive. And so there's a very real consideration to be like, look, this just isn't working. We've been trying this for a while. We should pause, or we should reevaluate. And where we shifted to was a more holistic, proactive approach, where we just leaned into the fact that customers are completely unorganized, rebuilt vendor management, and said, if we can give you a base foundation to make sure that you can see everything in place, we can be proactive on your behalf. That switch was not obvious at the time. Reactive to proactive was a long conversation and a hard decision, but I would say that's a very real example of that. And now we're ripping. Like it's absolutely crushing it because our customers don't have to think about any of their vendor renewals. It's just automated for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. Alrighty, we're coming up to time, and so I just want to end with just a couple of sort of quick fire questions for both of you guys. The first one is, what advice would you have for first time founders? Anyone watching this who is thinking of starting their own company or has just started their own company. What's kind of the biggest piece of advice that you'd give to them? Shensi, maybe you first.
Learn how to sell. I think a lot of founders think that you can outsource that and then you can outsource recruiting to other people, but everything is a sale. When you're fundraising, you're selling. When you're selling, you're selling. When you're recruiting, you're selling. You got to learn how to fucking sell. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
I totally,
Nice.
I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. That is the number one. I think the other one that is non-intuitive, and this is a lot of the companies that I study, just sort of in the background. I think going slow to go fast really matters. And what I mean by that specifically is like making sure you have the right partners, making sure you have the right people on board. It is incredibly painful because all you want to do is move fast as a startup. I mean, look at Tegas, for example. You may or may not know Tegas as a business, but they've flipped the model of GLG on their head. No one really knew who they were until they're now, oh, wait, they're a $3 billion company. They had one investor for a very long time. They had key partners. And they just talked to customers for like 18 months before they launched anything. And I think it feels slow and it feels painful talking to customers, truly understanding their problems and deciding where to focus. But then with that base of knowledge, your build curve is exponential. And so you can just go so much faster. And so that's the other piece of advice. But first, learn to sell. That's the key.
Nice. Yeah, everything's downstream sales. Awesome. And final question for both of you. What's kind of your biggest learning over the last 6 months? Shensi, for you first.
Oh, over the last 6 months. It gets harder every month. It doesn't get easier at all because we used to always just be like, oh, when we have more people, it's gonna get like easier, or like when we have more like customers, it's gonna get easier, or like when we have more code, it's gonna get easier. It just keeps getting harder, and so I think that was just like a big realization that like every step is actually just gonna keep getting harder, but it's okay. It's gonna be really
fun. Yeah, it never gets easier. It just the outcome just gets more intense. So both in the positive and the negative. I would say the greatest. I actually learned this from Kareem. I think the greatest learning for me, specifically with very small, narrow, focused teams, is trust as a battery. And there are things that you can do to recharge the battery, and there are things that you can do to deplete the battery. And so there may be some core decisions that you make on product where it's like, look, we're doing this and we're going to go. And so I think like that, again, like not explaining the why can deplete the battery, but then understanding and like enabling the team can recharge the battery. And so I think that's been so helpful for me to understand the motivations of teams as we grow.
Nice. That's super interesting. Thanks for sharing. I think Shensi is just dropped off. She is back with us.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. It just restarted. I'm sorry.
Same for me.
All good. No, guys, this was awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. It's been great hanging out. I think we should definitely do more of these. Lots of good stuff in there for everyone. We'll be sharing the recording with everyone who RSVP'd. Sorry for the audio and visual issues. I know my camera has apparently been very low quality throughout, but hopefully in the recording, I think it'll be using our local recordings of all these things. So the recording should be good quality, and so we'll be sharing that out. Thanks once again, Kimia and Shensi. For anyone watching, if you're not already using Merge and or Remp, do check them out. And for both of you guys personally, where can people find you online, Twitter, social media, websites, anything like that you want to plug? Shensi, maybe you first.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and you can also email me at shensi@merge.dev.
Perfect.
All the usual channels. If you do have any questions, I would love to chat. Kimia@ramp.com. Pretty straightforward.
Amazing. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for having us.